हे हे एवरीवन, वेलकम बैक करता हूँ और एक नई वीडियो में। एंड आज की वीडियो में मैं रीडिंग करने वाला हूँ, जो कि मैं द ब्रेन बुक की इस बुक की जो पहली चैप्टर है, हु आम आई के बारे में। एंड इस चैप्टर में लगभग 17 पेजेस हैं। एंड तो उस सारे पेजेस को आज रीडिंग करने वाला है। जितना भी टाइम लगेगा मैं रीडिंग करूँगा। एंड इसकी जो इंट्रोडक्शन पार्ट थी वो मैं उसे पिछले वीडियो में रीडिंग कर चुका हूँ। तो उससे अगर आप इसकी जो इंट्रोडक्शन है उसे आप देखना है तो आप जा सकते हैं। मेरी जो पिछले वीडियो है, जो लास्ट वीडियो थी। तो आज ज़्यादा कुछ नहीं आपको बोलना चाहूँगा। एंड ये जो मेरी रीडिंग है वो इंग्लिश में रहने वाली है। तो ओके, आपको ये समझ में आएगी बिकॉज ये थोड़ी सी एवरेज इंग्लिश में लिखा है, तो आपको भी समझ में आएगी इजीली। थोड़ी थोड़ी सी इंग्लिश आपको पता होगा तो। एंड ऑल्सो मैं इसके बाद भी मेरा श्री कृष्ण का, जो कि मैं उड़िया में उसे रीडिंग करता हूँ, उड़िया का एक बुक है उस वो रीडिंग करता हूँ, उसे भी रीडिंग करूँगा। एंड तो ज़्यादा कुछ नहीं, लेट्स स्टार्ट करते हैं। ओके, आई एम अतुल एंड आई एम स्टार्टिंग टुडे। जो पहली चैप्टर है इस बुक की, उसका जो टाइटल ये है कि जो हु आम आई, मतलब मैं कौन हूँ। ओके, ये देख सकते हो। ये जो पहला ये चैप्टर शुरू होने से पहले ये लिखा है कि ऑल द एक्सपीरियंसेस इन लाइफ, फ्रॉम सिंगल कन्वर्जेशंस टू योर ब्रॉडर कल्चर, save the microscopic details of your brain. Neurally speaking, who you are depends on where you have been. Your brain is a relentless shifter, constantly rewriting its own circuitry. Okay, and इसके बाद है and because your experiences are unique, so are the vast detailed patterns in your neural networks, because they continue to change your whole life. Your identity is a moving target. It never reaches an end point. वो उसका अप्रोच हो रही है बट वो कभी एंड नहीं होगी। ओके, इसमें लिखा गया है कि जो आपकी जो ज़िंदगी में जो छोटी छोटी सी मोमेंट्स होती हैं, छोटी छोटी जो आप फेस सिचुएशंस होती है, वो आपके ब्रेन में एक माइक्रोस्कोपिक डिटेल से, मतलब वहाँ पर अब बनती है, आपकी बिलीफ बनती है या आपका डिसीजन मेकिंग स्टाइल्स बनती है, वो न्यूरल्स बनती है। एंड वो जितने ओके, आपको पता है कि आपका दिमाग ना मूड शिफ्टर बहुत ज़्यादा शिफ्ट करेगा वो मूड्स, बिकॉज अकॉर्डिंग टू द सिचुएशन वो उसे चेंज करेगा। अगर आप ठंड में हैं तो आपको ठंड लगेगा, आप गर्मी में हो तो आपको गर्मी लगेगा, ऐसे ही। एंड उसके जो न्यूरल्स ना बहुत न्यूरल्स है, एंड वो उसका एंड कभी नहीं होता, एंड नेवर रिचेस एंड पॉइंट, मतलब कभी एंड पॉइंट तक वो रीच ही नहीं हो पाएगा। तो उसके बाद ये चैप्टर का जो पहला पेज है, इसमें लिखा गया है कि अल्दो neuroscience is my daily routine, I am still in a way every time I hold a human brain. After you take into account its substantial weight, an adult brain weighs in at 3 pounds. Its strange consistency, like firm jelly, and its wrinkled appearance, deep valleys carving a hoppy landscape. What's striking is the brain's sheer physicality. This hunk of unremarkable stuff seems so at odds with the mental processes it creates. Our thoughts and our dreams, our memories, and our experience all arise from this strange neural material. Who we are is found within its intricate firing patterns of electrochemical pulses. When that when that activity stops. So do you, when that activity changes character, do you injury or drugs, you change character in lockstep. Unlike any other part of your body, if you damage a small piece of the brain, who you are is likely to change radically. To understand how this possible, let's start at the beginning. तो ये सारी चीज़ों को समझने के लिए हमें शुरुआत करना पड़ेगा बिगिनिंग से। तो बिगिनिंग ये है बोर्न, बोर्न अनफिनिश्ड। ओके, at the birth we humans are helpless, and we spend about a year unable to walk, about two more before we can articulate full thoughts, and many more years unable to fend for ourselves. We are totally dependent on those around us for our survival. Now compare this to many other mammalas. Dolphins, for instance, are born swimming, and giraffes learn to stand within hours. A baby zebra can run within 45 minutes of birth. A baby across the animal kingdom, our cousins are strikingly independent soon after they are born. On the face of it, that seems like a great advantage for other species, but in fact, it signifies a limitation. Baby animals develop quickly because their brains are wearing off according to a largely pre programmed routine, but that preparedness trades off with flexibility. Imagine imagine if some helpless rhinoceros found itself on the Arctic tundra, or on the top of mountain in the Himalayas, or in the middle of urban Tokyo. It would have no capacity to adapt, which is why we don't find rhinos in those areas. This strategy of arriving with a pre-arranged brain worked inside a particular niche in the ecosystem. But put an animal outside of that niche, and its chances of thriving are low. In contrast, humans are able to thrive in many different environments, from the frozen tundra to the high mountains to bustling urban centers. This is possible because the human brain is born remarkably unfinished. Instead of arriving with everything wired off, let's call it hardwired. A human brain allows itself to be shaped by the details of life experiences. This leads to long period of helplessness as the young brain slowly mold to its environment, its life weird. ओके, आपको बताना चाहूँगा कि ये जो पहले जो मैं रीडिंग किया कि जो बोर्न अनफिनिश्ड, इसमें कहा गया है क्या, हमें पता है कि जो एनिमल के जो बच्चे होते हैं, जब उसे पैदा होते हैं, पैदा होने के बाद थोड़ी देर में ही, कुछ समय के बाद ही वो चलना फिरना कर लेते हैं, चल फिरते हैं, बट वो इंडिपेंडेंट हो जाते हैं उसमें। बट इन द केस ऑफ द ह्यूमंस, जो वो पैदा होते हैं, उन्हें डिपेंड होना पड़ता है उनके सराउंड्स में, जो भी हो, उनकी मम्मी, उनके पापा, जो भी हो, उनके सराउंड्स में, उनके ऊपर उन्हें डिपेंड होना पड़ता है। क्यों? ओके, फिर से मैं आना चाहूँगा एनिमल केस में। एनिमल केस में जो उनकी जो दिमाग होती है वो पहले से प्रिपेयर्ड, मतलब प्री वेयर्ड, मतलब वो वेयर्ड सेटअप होकर आता है। बट इन द केस ऑफ ह्यूमन वो सेटअप नहीं होता, वो धीरे धीरे जो लाइफ के एक्सपीरियंस है उसके हिसाब से उसके ब्रेन में फिट होते हैं। लेकिन जो एनिमल के केस में वो प्रिपेयर्ड रूटीन नहीं कराता है, जो कि उस अगर मेरी मम्मी की जो ब्रेन जैसे फंक्शन करती है, तो मेरी भी उसी हिसाब से प्रिपेयर होके आएगी, ओके, बन के आएगी मेरी दिमाग। ये इस टाइप की जो कनेक्शन होती है वो एनिमल में केस में होता है, बट इन द किस सिचुएशन ह्यूमंस में ऐसा नहीं होता। ओके, एंड नेक्स्ट है चाइल्डहुड रन प्रूनिंग, चाइल्डहुड प्रूनिंग द स्टैचू इन द मार्बल। ओके ओके, इसके इसमें क्या लिखा है, लेट्स उसके जाते हैं अंदर। What's the secret behind the flexibility of young brains? And it's not about growing new cells. In fact, the number of brain cells is the same in the children and adults. Instead of secret lies in how those cells are connected. At, at birth, a baby's neurons are disparate and unconnected. And in the first 2 years of life, they begin connecting off extremely rapidly as they take in sensory information. As many as 2 million new connections or synapses are formed formed every second in an infant's brain. By age 2, a child has over 100 trillion synapses and double the number an adult has. It has now reached a peak and has far more connections than it will need. At this point, the blooming of new connections is supplanted by a strategy of neural pruning. As you mature, 50% of your synapse will be paired back, and which synapse stay and which go. And when a synapse successfully participates in a circuit, it is strengthened. In contrast, in contrast, synapse weaken. Synapse weaken if they are not useful, and eventually they are eliminated. Just like paths in a forest, you lose the connections that you don't use. In a sense, the process of becoming who you are is defined by carving back the possibilities that were already present. You become who you are not because of what grows in your brain, but because of what is removed. ओके, इसमें कहा गया है कि सीक्रेट लिखा है कि बिहाइंड द फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी ऑफ द यंग ब्रेन्स। ओके, जब हम छोटे होते हैं, उसमें ना बहुत सारे छोटे एंड जो बड़े का जो ब्रेन सेल्स है वो सेम होते हैं, इसमें लिखा है। बट एक ये बात ये है कि जो कनेक्शंस ना, जो पेयर्डनेस सर्किट बनते हैं यंग्स में, वो जब वो छोटा होते हैं, जब सर्किट्स में वो कनेक्ट नहीं हो पाते थे, तो रैपिडली वो चेंजेस होते हैं। वो जब वो ग्रो होता है तो वो सर्किट्स बनते जाते हैं, एंड वो बिलिंग सिस्टम हम ये क्रिएट करते हैं कि हम बनते हैं उसी हिसाब से जो चीज़ हम क्या कहते हैं, हमें जो चीज़ हमारे सेल्स और न्यूज जरूरत है। देखिए, बहुत सारे तो सेल्स में है, उसमें से अगर कुछ सेल्स और न्यूज रह जाते हैं, अगर वो रिमूव हो जाते हैं, ओके, आपको ऐसे यहाँ पर एग्जांपल दिया गया है कि आप फॉरेस्ट में जा रहे हैं, ओके, बहुत जो रास्ता आपको जाना ही नहीं, तो बहुत कुछ दिन बाद वो फॉरेस्ट में मिक्स हो जाएगा, आपको पता नहीं चलेगा यहाँ पर भी एक रोड था। उस हिसाब से तो अगर आप जो भी चीज़ आप जो बनते हो, जो कि आपको जो रिमूव हो गया, तुम्हारे जो सेल्स ब्रेन सेल्स रिमूव हो गए, उस हिसाब से आप बनते हो आपका लाइफ। एंड नेक्स्ट है लाइव वेयरिंग। Many animals are born genetically pre-programmed or hardwired for the certain instincts and behaviors. Genes guide the construction of their bodies and brains in specific ways that define what they will be and how they will behave. A fly's reflex to escape in the presence of a passing shadow, a robin's pre-programmed instinct to fly south in the winter, a bear's desire to hibernate, a dog's drive to protect its master. These are all examples of instincts and behaviors that are hardwired. Hardwiring allows these creatures to move as their parents do from birth, and in some cases to eat for themselves and survive independently. In humans, the situation is somewhat different. The human's brain comes into the world with some amount of genetic hardwiring. For example, for breathing, crying, and suckling, caring about faces, and having the ability to learn the details of their native language. But compared to the rest of animals' kingdoms, human brains are unusually incomplete at birth. The detailed wiring diagram of the human brain is not pre-programmed. Instead, genes give very general directions for the blueprints of neural networks, and world experiences fine tuned tunes the rest of the wiring, allowing it to adapt to the local details. The human brain's ability to shape itself to the world into which it's born as has allowed our species to take over every ecosystem on the planet and begin our move into our solar system. ओके, एंड नेक्स्ट आते हैं जो जो वेड जो था, जो ब्रेन का जो वेड जो होता है, इसमें पहला होता है न्यू बॉर्न, जब हम छोटे थे न्यू बॉर्न। उसके बाद आता है 1 मंथ के बाद थोड़ी सी सर्कस बन जाती है, एंड 9 मंथ्स के बाद वो बच्चा का जो सर्कस है ऑलमोस्ट एवरेजिंग बन जाता है, एंड 2 ईयर के बाद पूरी सर्कस ना बन जाती है पूरा। देख सकते हैं ये 2 ईयर्स वाला, कहाँ, हाँ ये 2 ईयर्स वाला। एंड ये होता है आडल्ट, जब हम आडल्ट बनते हैं तो पूरी सर्किट्स इधर उधर से कनेक्शन हो जाती है सेल्स के अंदर से। ओके, तो थ्रू आउट आवर childhoods, our local environments refine our brain, taking the jungle of possibilities and shaping it back to correspond to what we are exposed to. Our brains form a fewer but stronger connection. ओके, लाइव वेयरिंग जो इसमें लिखा है कि क्या लिखा है कि जो इंसान के दिमाग जो अपने पेरेंट्स से कुछ जीन्स जो कुछ क्वालिटीज कम ही क्वालिटीज लाते हैं, बट इन द केस ऑफ द अदर एनिमल्स किंगडम वो ज़्यादा क्वालिटीज लेकर आते हैं। As an example, the language that you are exposed to in infancy, say English versus Japanese, refines your ability to hear the particular sound of your language and or sense your capacity to hear the sounds of other languages. That is, a baby born in Japan and a baby born in America can hear and respond to all the sounds in the both languages. Through time, the baby raised in Japan will lose the ability to distinguish between the sounds of R and L, two sounds that aren't separated. In Japanese, we were sculpted by the world we happen to drop into. ओके, उसके बाद ये ड्राइंग है एंड इस ओके, उसके बाद आते हैं हमारे जो nature's gamble, nature's gamble. Okay, over our protracted childhood, the brain continually pairs back into its connections, shaping itself to particular particular of its environment, and this is a smart strategy to match a brain to its environment, but it also comes with risk. If developing brains are not given the proper expected environment, and one in which a child is nurtured and looking after, the brain will struggle to develop normally. This is something the Jensen family from which Wisconsin has experienced firsthand. Carol and Bill Jensen adopted Tom, John and Victoria when the children were 4 years old. The three children were orphans who had, until their adoption, endured appalling conditions in state-run orphanages in Romania, with consequences for their brain development. When the Jensens picked up the children and took a taxi out of Romania, Carol asked the taxi driver to translate what the children were saying. The taxi driver explained they were speaking gibberish. It was not a known language, starved of normal interaction. The children had developed a strange Creole. As they have grown up, the children have had to deal with learning disabilities, the scars of their childhood deprivation. Tom, John, and the Victoria don't remember much about their time in Romania. In contrast, someone who remembers the institutions vividly is Dr. Charles Nelson, professor of pedia- pediatrics at Boston Children's Hospital. He first visited these institutions in 1999. What he saw horrified him. Young children were kept in their cribs with no sensory stimulation. Sorry. Okay. Kept with their no sensory stimulation. There was a single caretaker for every 15 children, and these workers were instructed not to pick the children up and show them affection in any way, even when they were crying. The concern was that such displays of affection would lead to the children wanting more. The impossibility with the limited staffing. This in this context, these things were as regimented as possible. Children were lined up on plastic pots for toileting. Everyone got the same haircut, regardless of gender. They were dressed like fed on schedule, and everything was mechanized. Children whose cries went unanswered soon learned not to cry. The children were not held and were not played with. Although they had their basic needs met, they were fed, washed, and clothed. The infants were deprived of emotional care, support, and any kind of stimulation. As a result, they developed indiscriminate friendliness. Nelson explains that he had walked into a room and be surrounded by little kids he had never seen before, and they had want to jump into his arms and sit on his lap and hold his hand or walk off with him. Although this sort of indiscrimination behavior seems sweet at first glance, it's a coping strategy of neglected children, and it goes hand in hand with long-term attachment issues. It is a hallmark behavior of children who have grown up an institution. Second, why the conditions they were witnessing, Nelson and his team set up the Bucharest yearly intervention program. They assessed 136 children aged 6 months to 3 years who had been living in institutions from birth. First, it became clear that the children had IQs in the 60s and 70s compared to an average of 100. The children showed signs of underdeveloped brains and their language was very delayed. When Nelson used encephal, encephalography EEG to measure the electrical activity in these children's brain, he found they had dramatically reduced neural activity. Without an environment with emotional care and cognitive stimulation, the human brains cannot develop normally. And encouragingly, Nelson's study also revealed an important flip side. The brain can often recover to varying degrees once the children are removed to a safe and loving environment. The younger a child is removed, the better his recovery. The children removed to foster homes before the age of 2 generally recovered well. After 2, they made improvements, but depending on the age of the children or child, they were left with differing levels of developmental problems. Nelson's results highlight the critical role of a loving, nurturing environment for a developing child's brain. And this illustrates the profound importance of the environment around us in shaping who we become, and we are exquisitely sensitive to our surroundings because of the wire on the fly strategy of the human brain, who where our defense heavily on where we have been. ओके बहुत ओके इसके बाद एक रोमानियास रोमानियास ऑर्फानेज के बारे में इसमें लिखा है, इसके बारे में हम रीडिंग करेंगे, बट इसके बारे में थोड़ी सी मैं बताना चाहूँगा आपको कि इसमें क्या लिखा है। एक नेल्सन एक स्टडी किया था जो कि ऑर्फन बच्चों को लेकर। ओके, एक या जो मैं जो रीडिंग किया इसमें नेचर्स गैम्बल, इसमें एक एक कंटेक्स्ट लिखा है। कंटेक्स्ट ये है कि जो बच्चे हम जहाँ पे जो हम पैदा होते हैं, अगर पैदा होने के बाद हम जिस सिचुएशन जिस सराउंड्स में रहते हैं, जो एनवायरनमेंट पे रहते हैं, उस एनवायरनमेंट की जो अफेक्ट ना आपके दिमाग में पड़ेगी, एंड वो दिमाग में अगर पड़ेगा तो आपके जो लाइफ में भी पड़ेगी, आपके नेचर ऊपर पड़ेगा। एंड ऑर्फनेज में लिखा है कि सबका जो नेल्सन एक ऑर्फनेज में जाते हैं एंड उसमें वो देखते हैं कि सब बच्चों को वहाँ पर बच्चे एक स्टाइल पे ही बैठा जाता है एंड 15 बच्चों को संभालने के लिए एक ही केयर टेकर रहता है। वो केयर टेकर की बहुत कमी है, इसीलिए वो 15 बच्चों को संभालती है। एक बच्चा को संभालना बहुत मुश्किल है, लेकिन वहाँ पर 15 बच्चों कैसे वहाँ पर मैकेनाइज करा जाता है। सबको एक ही टाइम पे खाना दिया जाता है, एक ही टाइप का, एंड सबका एक ही हेयर कट कटवा दिया जाता है एंड सबका। एंड वहीं पर जो बच्चा बढ़ता है एंड अगर वो रोता है किसी चीज़ को पाने के लिए तो उसे दिया नहीं जाता है, तो वो अपने सराउंड्स में बच्चों को देखता है तो रोना भी छोड़ देता है। एंड उसके जो न्यूरॉन्स होते हैं वो सर्किट्स वो रिड्यूस होते जाते हैं। अगर वो उसे एक अच्छी सराउंड्स में अच्छी एनवायरनमेंट रखा जाए तो एक वो बच्चा अच्छा से ग्रोथ पाएगा एंड उसके न्यूरॉन्स भी अच्छे से डेवलप होंगे। एंड जो रोमानियस ऑर्फनेज के बारे में लिखा है तो उसके बारे में थोड़ी सी मैं रीडिंग करता हूँ। In 1996, in 1966, to increase the population and workforce, Romania's President Nicol Ceausescu, okay, थोड़ी सी प्रोनाउंसिएशन नहीं हो रही है, banned contraception and abortion. State gynecologist known as menstrual police examined women of childbearing age to ensure they were producing enough offspring. A celibacy tax was levied on the families who had fewer than 5 children. The birth rate skyrocketed. Many poor families couldn't afford to care for their children, and so they gave them over to the state-run institutions. In turn, the state rolled out more institutions to meet the soaring numbers by 1989, by when Ceausescu, जो कि प्रेसिडेंट थे, was austere 170,000 abandoned children resided in institutions. Scientists soon revealed the consequences of an institutional upbringing on brain development, and those studies influenced government policy. Over the years, most of the Romanians orphans have been returned to their parents or removed to government foster care. By 2005, Romania made it illegal for children to be institutionalized before the age of 2 unless severely disabled. Millions of orphans still live in institutionalized government care around the world. Given the necessity of nurturing environment for an infant's developing brain, it is imperative that governments find ways to get the children into the conditions that allow proper brain development. ओके, इन द 1996 में रोमानिया की जो प्रेसिडेंट थे वो पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ करने के लिए एक स्कीम लाए। वो स्कीम में ये था जो हर घर में 5 से ज़्यादा बच्चा होना चाहिए। तो ऐसे नोटिस निकला तो उसका जो पॉपुलेशन था रोमानिया का वो हाईली ग्रोथ हुआ। मतलब इतनी ज़्यादा स्पीड में ग्रोथ हुई कि जो बच्चे पैदा कर रहे हैं ना, वो बच्चे अपने बच्चों के ही संभाल नहीं पा रहे थे। एंड वो क्या करते थे, वो शिफ्ट कर दिया, जो बच्चा था संभाल नहीं पा रहे थे वो बच्चों को, वो इंस्टीट्यूशन जो स्टेट ऑर्फनेज चलाती है ना गवर्नमेंट, उसमें वो ट्रांसफ़र करते हैं अपने बच्चों को। एंड 2 साल के अंदर इतने ज़्यादा जो बच्चे होते हैं वो इंस्टीट्यूशनल में फोर्स ज़्यादा जाता है। 170,000 मतलब इतनी ज़्यादा। 1966 में वो बोल दिया कि ग्रोथ के लिए। एंड 1989 में 170 चिल्ड्रन रिसाइडेड इन इंस्टीट्यूशन है 170,000, मतलब कितने बच्चों देख सकते हो। तो इसमें साइंटिस्ट ने एक रिवील किया कि जो बच्चे इंस्टीट्यूशन में पले बढ़ते हैं वो उनकी जो ब्रेन जो फंक्शंस वो रिड्यूस होती जा रही है एंड डेवलपमेंट नहीं हो पा रही है अच्छे से। एंड उसके बाद वो गवर्नमेंट ने क्या किया कि इन 2005 में उसे इलीगल घोषित कर दिया। एंड जो बच्चा को 2 साल तक अपने पास रख सकता है एंड रोकने के बाद 2 साल होने के बाद ही आप इंस्टीट्यूशन में आप उसे भेज सकते हैं, ऑर्फन हेज में भेज सकते हैं। तो ये देख सकते हो कितना बड़ा इम्पैक्ट करता है एक। ओके, ये था रोमानियस ऑर्फनेज से। एंड नेक्स्ट है हमारा द नेक्स्ट सॉरी द टीन ईयर्स। टीन मतलब छोटे। तो ये है कि जो ओनली ए कपल of decades ago, it was thought that brain development was mostly complete by the end of childhood. चाइल्डहुड खत्म होते होते हमारे जो बच्चे के जो दिमाग वो डेवलपमेंट वो कंप्लीट होती है। बट वी नाउ नो दैट द प्रोसेस ऑफ बिल्डिंग a human brain takes of the 25 years. The 10 years are a period of such important neural recog reorganization and change that it dramatically affects who we seem to be. Hormones coursing around our bodies cause obvious physical changes as we take on the appearance of adults, but out of the sight, our brains are undergoing equally mon- monumental changes. These changes profoundly color how we behave and react to the world around us. One of these changes has to do with an emerging sense of self, and with it and self-consciousness. To get a sense of the teen brain at work, we ran a simple experiment with the help of my graduate students, Ricky Subjani. We asked volunteers to sit on a stool in a soft window display, and we then pulled back the curtain to expose the volunteer looking out on the world to be gawked at gawked passer passerby before sending them into this socially awkward situation. We raised of each volunteer, so we had to be able to measure their emotional response. We hooked them up with a device to measure the galvanic skin response, जो कि GSR, a useful proxy for anxiety. And the more your sweat glands open, the higher your skin conductance will be. This is, by the way, the same technology used in a lie detector और polygraph test में भी यूज किया जाता है। ओके ओके उसके बाद जो both adults and the teens participated in our experiment. In adults, we observed a stress response from being stared at by the strangers, exactly as expected. But in teenagers, that same experience caused social emotions to go into overdrive. The teens were much more anxious, some to the point of trembling while they were being watched. Weigh the difference between the adults and the teens. The answer involves an area of the brain called the medial prefrontal cortex MPFC. This region becomes active when you think about yourself and especially the emotional significance of a situation to yourself. Dr. Leah Dr. Leo Somerville and her colleagues at Harvard University found that as one grows from childhood to adolescence, the MPFC becomes more active in social situations. And speaking at around 15 years old, at this point, social situations carry a lot of emotional weight, resulting in a self-conscious stress response of high intensity. That is, in adolescence, thinking about one's self, so called self evaluation, is high priority. In contrast, an adult brain has grown accustomed to a sense of self, like having broken in a new pair of shoes. And as a result, an adult does not care as much about sitting in the shop window. ओके, MFC का जो फुल फॉर्म है कि मेडियल फ्री फ्रंटल कॉर्टेक्स, जो कि एक ब्रेन का एक पार्ट होता है। नेक्स्ट है कि बियॉन्ड सोशल awkwardness and the emotional hypersensitivity, the teen brain is set up to take risks, whether it's driving fast and sexting, naked photos, and risky behaviors are more tempting to the teen brain than the adult brain. Much of that has to do with the way we respond to rewards and incentives. As we move from childhood into the adolescence, the brain shows an increasing response to rewards in areas related to the pleasure seeking. One such area is called the nucleus accumbens. In teens, the activity here is as high as it is in adults. But here, the important fact, activity in the orbit of frontal cortex involved in executive decisions making, attention, and simulating future consequences is still about the same in teens as it is in children. A mature pleasure seeking system coupled with an immature orbital frontal cortex means that teens are not only emotionally hypersensitive but also less able to control their emotions than adults. Okay, moreover, Somerville and her team have an idea why peer pressure strongly compels behavior in teens. Areas involved in social consideration, such as MPFC, are more strongly coupled to other brain regions than translate motivations into the actions. The striatum and its network of connections. This they suggest might explain why teens are more likely to take risks when their friends around. How we see the world as a teenager is consequences of a changing brain that's right on schedule. These changes lead us to be more self-conscious, more risk-taking, and more prone to peer-motivated behavior. For a frustrated parents the world over, there is an important message. Who we are as a teenager is not simply the result of a choice of or an attitude. It is the product of a period of intense and in, inevitable neural changes. ओके, इसमें जो द टीन ईयर्स, ओके, इसमें एक सिंपल मैं आपको बताना चाहूँगा कि इसमें क्या लिखा है। इसमें जो एक्सपेरिमेंट किया है किसने, ओके, ओके, आपको बताऊंगा कि इसमें एक एक्सपेरिमेंट को बताया गया है, जिसमें एक्सपेरिमेंट किया गया है कि चाइल्डहुड और जो टीनेजर एंड एडल्ट को लेकर। एंड इसमें पाया गया है कि जो टीनेजर होते हैं वो हाइपर सेंसिटिव भी होते हैं एंड वो इमोशंस को कंट्रोल नहीं कर पाते हैं। डान जो अडल्ट होते हैं वो इमोशंस कंट्रोल करते हैं, वो अपने अंदर रखते हैं, छुपा के रखते हैं। एंड जो फ्रेंड्स जो फ्रेंड्स से सराउंड्स में अगर होते हैं तो वो इमोशंस कंट्रोल कर पाते हैं, बट इन केस ऑफ द चिल्ड्रेन वो कंट्रोल नहीं कर पाते हैं। ये वो चाहे वो सेक्सटिंग हो या किसी नेक्ड फोटोज को देखकर वो, या किसी रिस्क की चीज़ को देखकर वो कर लेते हैं, वो हाई रिस्क कर लेते हैं। ओके, एंड उससे पहले इसमें एक लिखा है कि स्कल्पिंग द ब्रेन एडोलसेंट ब्रेन was sculpting the brain and adolescent brain. ओके, इसमें लिखा ही है कि तो आफ्टर चाइल्डहुड जस्ट बिफोर द वन सेट ऑफ द पॉवर्टी there is a second period of overproduction. The prefrontal cortex sprouts new cells and new connections, synapse, thereby creating new pathways for molding. This excess is followed by the approximately a decade of pruning. Although our teenage years, weaker connections are trimmed back, while stronger connections are reinforced forced. As a result of this thinning out, the volume of the prefrontal cortex reduces by about 1% per year during the teenage years. The shaping of circuits during the teen years sets us of the lessons we learn on our path to becoming adults, because these massive changes take place in brain areas required for higher regions and the control of urges. Adolescence is a time of steep cognitive changes. The the dorse lateral prefrontal cortex, important for the controlling impulses, is among the most related region to mature, not reaching its adult state until the early 20s. Well before neuroscientists worked out the details, car insurance companies noticed the consequences of incomplete brain maturation, and they accordingly charge more for teen drivers. Likewise, the criminal justice system has long held this intuition, and thus juven, uh, juveniles juveniles are treated differently than adults. Okay, this is all about the teen years. And next is the plasticity in adulthood. Plasticity in adulthood. By the time we are 25 years of age, the brain transformations of childhood and adolescence are finally over. The tectonic shifts in our identity and personality have ended, and our brain appears to now be fully developed. You might think that who we are as adults is now fixed in place, immovable, but it's not. In adulthood, our brains continue to change, something that can be shaped and can hold that shape is what we describe as plastic, and so it is with the brain. Even in adulthood, experience changes it and it retains the changes. To get a sense of how impressive these physical changes can be, uh, consider the brains of a particular group of men and women who work in London. The cityscape drivers, they undergo 4 years of intensive training to pass the knowledge of London, one of society's most difficult feats of memory. The knowledge requires a spring cabbage to memorize London's extensive roadways in all their combinations and the permutations. This is an exceedingly difficult task. The knowledge covers 320 different routes through the city, 25,000 individual streets, and 20,000 landmarks and the points of interest, hotels, theaters, restaurants, and embassies, police stations, sports facilities, and anywhere a passenger is likely to want to go. Students of the knowledge typically spend 3 to 4 hours a day reciting theoretical journals. The unique mental challenges of the knowledge sparked the interest of a group of neuroscientists from University Knowledge London. Okay, University College London, who scanned the brains of the several cab drivers. The scientists were particularly interested in a small area of the brain called the hippocampus, vital for our memory and, in particular, spatial memory. The scientists discovered visible differences in the cabbie's brain. In the drivers, the posterior part of the hippocampus had grown physically larger than those in control group, pre- presumably causing their increased spatial memory. The researchers also found that the longer a cabbie has been doing his job, the bigger the change in the brain region, suggesting that the result was not simply reflecting a pre existing condition of people who go into the profession, but instead the resulted from practice. The cab driver study demonstrates that adult brains are not fixed in place, but instead can reconfigure so much that the change is visible to the trained eye. It's not just cab drivers whose brains reshape themselves. When one of the most famous brains of the 20th century was examined, Albert Einstein's brain did not reveal the secret of his genius, but it did so that the brain area devoted to his left fingers has had expanded, forming a giant fold in his cortex called the omega sign, shaped like the Greek symbol omega. Okay, omega आपको पता नहीं like ऐसे होता है. Okay, all thanks to his less commonly known passion for the playing the violin. This fold becomes enlarged in experienced violin players who intensively develop fine dexterity with the fingers of their left hand. Piano players, in contrast, develop an omega sign in both hemispheres as they use both hands in fine detailed movements. The shape of the hills, the valleys in the brain is largely conserved across people, but the finer details give a personal and unique reflection of where you have been and who you are now. Although most of the changes are too small to detect with the naked eye, everything you have experienced has altered the physical structure of your brain, from the expression form of genes to the positions of the molecules, to the architecture of neurons, your family of origin, your culture, your friends, your work. Every movie you have watched, every conversation you have had, these have all left their footprints in your nervous system. These indelible microscopic impressions accumulate to make you who you are and to constrain who can become. You can become. ओके, प्लास्टिसिटी इन अडल्टहुड. ओके, मैं डायरेक्टली आपको कहना चाहूँगा कि इसमें क्या लिखा है डायरेक्टली. इसमें ये लिखा है कि एक एक्सपेरिमेंट किया गया था जो लंदन के जो ड्राइवर्स होते हैं, केब ड्राइवर्स, उनके ऊपर, एंड उनके ऊपर जब ब्रेन ऊपर किया गया था, एंड उस ब्रेन में उनके ब्रेन जो नॉर्मल इंसान के ब्रेन में बहुत डिफर था, बिकॉज उस केब ड्राइवर को जो चलाने का लाइसेंस देने से पहले बहुत ज़्यादा एक्सटेंसिव एक ट्रेनिंग में उसे नॉलेजेबल ट्रेनिंग दिया जाता है. उसमें उनको लंदन की ना सारी 20,000 लैंडमार्क, 25,000 स्ट्रीट्स एंड 220 डिफरेंट 320 डिफरेंट रूट्स को उन्हें याद करना पड़ता है. एंड इसमें सीधा ये कहा गया है कि जो आप पहले कर चुके हैं वो या कुछ मूवीज़ देखते हो या कहाँ जाते हो, किस कुछ प्लेस में जाते हो, तो उस प्लेस की जो फुटप्रिंट्स आपके नर्वस सिस्टम में रह जाती है। ओके, एंड नेक्स्ट आते हैं जो पैथोलॉजिकल चेंजेस। पैथोलॉजिकल चेंजेस, ओके, चेंजेस इन आवर ब्रेन represent what we have done and who we are, but what happens in the brain changes because of a disease or injury. Does this also alter who we are, our responsibilities? Personalities, our actions? On August 1st, 1966, Charles Whitman took an elevator to the observation deck of the University of Texas Tower in Austin. Then the 25 years old started firing indiscriminately at people below. 13 people were killed and 33 wounded until Whitman himself was finally shot dead by police. When they got to his house, they discovered that he had killed his wife and his mother the night before. There was only one thing more surprising than this random act of violence, and that was the lack of anything about Charles Whitman that would seem to have predicted it. He was an Eagle Scout and he was employed as a bank teller and he was an engineering student. Shortly after killing his wife and his mother, he had sat down and typed what amounted to a suicide note. And suicide note में वो लिखे थे sorry, I don't really understand myself these days, and I am supposed to be an average, reasonable, and intelligent young man. However, lately I cannot recall when it started. I have been a victim of many unusual and irrational thoughts. After my death, I wish that an autopsy would be performed on me to see if there is any visible physical disorder. Okay, Whitman's request was granted, and after an autopsy, the pathologist reported that Whitman had a small brain tumor, and it was about the size of nickel, and it was pressing against a part of his brain called the amygdala, which is involved in fear and aggression. This small amount of pressure on the amygdala led to a cascade of consequences in Whitman's brain, resulting in him taking actions that would otherwise be completely out of character. His brain matter had been changing, and who he was changed with it. This is an extreme example, but less dramatic changes in your brain can alter the fabric of who you are. Consider the ingestion, ingestion of drugs or alcohol, particular kinds of epil, epilepsy make people more religious. Parkinson's disease often makes people lose their faith, while the medication for the Parkinson's can often turn people into compulsive gamblers. It's not just illness or chemicals that change us from the movies we watch to the jobs we work. Everything contributes to the continual reshaping of the neural networks we summarize as us. So, who exactly are you? Is there any one down deep at the core? ओके, इस जो पैथोलॉजिकल चेंज का मतलब ये होता है कि आपके ब्रेन में कुछ ना कुछ डैमेज हुआ होगा। सपोज इसमें जो एग्जांपल दिया गया है उसमें एक पैथोलॉजिस्ट एक वाइट मैन एक इंसान का नाम होता है। वो क्या करता है कि अंधाधुन किस कुछ सोचा नहीं था, वो आकर फायरिंग करता है। उस फायरिंग में 31 पीपल विल बी डाई एंड 33 पीपल विल बी वुंडेड, मतलब इंजरी होते हैं। एंड उसके बाद पुलिस, वो जब तक वो फायरिंग करता रहा, जब तक वो उसे पुलिस ना मारा। एंड अगर जब उसके घर में जाकर पुलिस देखा तो वो देखा कि भाई उसमें एक सुसाइड नोट लिखा है। एंड उसमें ये लिखा है कि एंड कि बहुत ही कुछ दिनों हो गया, मैं मुझे पता नहीं चल रहा है कि मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ, एंड जो कब स्टार्ट हुआ ये भी मुझे रिमेम्बर नहीं है। तो ऐसे कुछ लिखा है। एंड अगर आफ्टर डेथ अगर मेरा डेथ होने के बाद कुछ मेरा स्कैन करा जाए, मेरे दिमाग में अगर कुछ डिसऑर्डर होगा तो। एंड जब वो फायरिंग करा, जिस दिन उस दिन की जो रात थी, उस रात में वो अपनी वाइफ एंड अपनी मदर को वो मार चुका था। एंड वो फेसेस है ना, एक इंजीनियरिंग स्टूडेंट था, एंड वो एक स्काउट में भी था, ईगल स्काउट में। एंड वो बैंक में काम कर रहा था। एंड जब ये सारे जो कॉन्सेंट पाने के बाद लास्ट में जो ग्रांटेड हो गया है कि भाई उसका जो दिमाग में थोड़ा स्कैन करा जाए कि क्या हुआ था उसे, क्या अगर कुछ फिजिकल डिसऑर्डर होगा तो कुछ किया जाएगा। तो जो एक पैथोलॉजिस्ट होते हैं वो उनका जो ब्रेन के ऊपर थोड़ी सी स्कैनिंग करते हैं, देखते हैं कि उसके जो ब्रेन, जो वेट मैन के जो अंदर एक छोटी सी ट्यूमर था, जो कि निकल छोटी सी, जो कि एग्रेशन एंड फियर के ऊपर जो होता है ना, इन्वॉल्व होता है वो चीज़। एंड वो फियर एंड एग्रेशन में वो क्या कर जाता है, खुद भी नहीं पता होता है। तो ये पैथोलॉजिकल चेंजेस होते हैं, जैसे कि वो चेंज होने के बाद वो इंसान जैसे बहुत सारे लोगों को इरेशनली वो मार दिया, बहुत सारे लोगों को। ओके, तो यहाँ पर लास्टली क्वेश्चन पूछा गया है, सो हु एग्जैक्टली आर यू। एंड आप यहाँ पर लास्टली पूछा गया है क्वेश्चन कि तुम एग्जैक्टली तुम कौन हो, एंड इज देयर एनी वन डाउन डीप एट द कोर। एंड तुम्हारे डाउन डीप कोर में कोई और नहीं है तो। ओके ओके, आफ्टर द pathological changes, now there is a, am I the sum of my memories। इसमें अभी मैं रीडिंग करने वाला हूँ, am I the sum of the memories। तो लेट्स स्टार्ट करते हैं। आवर ब्रेन्स एंड bodies changes so much during our life that like a clock's hour hand, it's difficult to detect the changes. Every 4 months, your red blood cells are entirely replaced. For instance, our skin cells are replaced every few weeks. Within about 7 years, every atom in your body will be replaced by other atoms. Physically, you are constantly a new you. Fortunately, there may be one constant that links all these different versions of yourself together: memory. Perhaps memory can serve as the thread that makes you who you are. It sits at the core of your identity, providing a single continuous sense of self. But there might be a problem here. Could the continuity be an illusion? Imagine you could walk into a park and meet yourself at different ages in your life. There you are aged 6, as a teenager in your late 20s, mid 50s, early 70s, all the way through your final year. In this scenario, you could all sit together and share the same stories about your life, teasing out the single thread of your identity. Or could you? You all first possess the name and the history, but the fact is that you are all somewhat different people in possession of different values and goals, and your life memories might have less in common than expected. Your memories of who you were at 15 is different to who you actually were at 15. Moreover, you will have different memories that relate back to the same event. Why? Because of what a memory is and isn't. Rather than memory being an accurate video recording of a moment in your life, it is a fragile brain state from a bygone time that must be resurrected for you to remember. Here is an example. You are at a restaurant for a friend's birthday. Everything you experience triggers particular patterns of activity in your brain. For example, there is a particular pattern of activity sparked into life by the conversation between your friends. Another pattern is activated by the smell of the coffee, yet another by the taste of a delicious little French cake. The fact that the waiter puts his thumb in your cup is another memorable detail, represented by the different configuration of neurons firing. All the all of these constellations become linked with one another in a vast associative network of neurons that the hippocampus replays over and over until the associations become fixed. The neurons that are active at the same time will establish stronger connections between them. Cells that fire together, wire together. The resulting network is the unique signature of the event, and it represents your memory of the birthday dinner. Now let's imagine the 6 months later you taste one of those little French cakes, just like the one you tasted at the birthday party. This very specific key can unlock the whole wave of associations. The original constellation of lights off like the lights of a city switching on. And suddenly we don't always realize it. The memory is not as rich as you might have expected. You know that your friends were there. He must have been wearing a suit because he always wear a suit. And she was wearing a blue shirt, or maybe it was purple. It might have been green. If I really prove the memory, you will realize that you can't remember the details of any of the other dinners at the restaurant, even though the place was full. So your memory of the birthday meal has started to fade. Why? Okay, यहाँ पर क्वेश्चन आते हैं why. For a start, you have a finite number of neurons, and they are all required to multitask. Each neuron participates in different constellations at different times. Your neurons operate in a dynamic matrix of shifting relationships, and heavy demand is continually placed on them to wire with others. So your memory of the birthday dinner has become modified. At those birthday, neurons have been co-opted to participate in other memory networks. The enemy of memory isn't time, it's other memories. Each new event needs to establish new relationships among the finite number of neurons. The surprise is that a faded memory does not seem faded to you. You feel, or at least assume, that the full picture is there, and your memory of the event is even more dubious. मतलब doubt. Say that in the intervening years since the dinner, your two friends have split off, thinking back on the dinner, and you might now misremember, sensing the red flags. Wasn't he more quiet than usual that night? Were not there moments of awkward silence between the two? Well, it will be difficult to know for certain because the knowledge that in your network now changes the memory that corresponds to them. You can't help but have your present color your past. So a single event may be perceived somewhat differently by you at different stages in your life. ओके, इसमें एक बहुत बढ़िया चीज़ दिया गया है, मतलब यह लिखा है कि इसका जो टाइटल है आपको बताना चाहूँगा, आम आई द सम ऑफ माई मेमोरीज। क्या मैं मेरी मेमोरीज का एक जो समेसन हूँ। अब इसमें एक कहा गया है कि अगर आपका जो स्टेजेस है हमें पता है, जो ब्लड सेल्स कुछ महीने के बाद वो चेंज होते हैं, रिप्लेस होते हैं बाई न्यू ब्लड सेल्स। एंड सेमली द आपके बॉडी स्किन से साथ में होता है। एंड साथ ओके, जब एक ऑलमोस्ट 7 years टेक करता है कि आपकी पूरी बॉडी की जो एटम वो फिजिकली चेंज, यू न्यू, आप एक न्यू वर्जन हो सकते हो अपने आप की। तो इसमें एक एग्जांपल देकर बताया गया है कि आप जो मेमोरी है वो डिफरेंट स्टेजेस में डिफरेंट क्यों होता है, लेकिन वो एक ही स्टोरी क्यों, एक ही स्टोरी, बट अगर तुम छोटे हो, चाइल्डहुड में हो, तो आपका वो स्टोरी एक डिफरेंट वेज में होगा। एंड अगर आप 15 में हो तो वो भी डिफरेंट। एंड आप अगर आपकी 20s में, आपकी 30s में, वो डिफरेंट होती जाएगी, क्योंकि आपके यहाँ पर पर्सपेक्टिव जाती है। ओके, इसमें क्या है, क्यों होता है ऐसा। ओके, सपोज मैं एक रेस्टोरेंट में गया एंड उसमें बहुत सारे लोग भी होंगे। एंड आप इस स्टोरी को आप किस तरह की यूज कर सकते हो, जैसे कि आप उसकी कुछ ना कुछ इम्पोर्टेंट, जैसे कि आप देख सकते हो उसकी केक को देखकर याद कर सकते हो कि हाँ, उसकी बर्थडे में उसकी बर्थडे नाइट में उस केक को यूज़ किया जाता है। उस केक का टेस्ट को याद करके आप उस स्टोरी को बना सकते हो, या किसी की कलर, ड्रेस कलर याद करके उस स्टोरी को याद कर सकते हो, या किसी की जो वेटर आता है उसमें देने के लिए, उस वेटर का जो थॉम इम्प्रेशन देखकर आप उस स्टोरी को याद कर सकते हो। यहाँ पर डिफरेंट डिफरेंट वेज हैं तो याद करने के लिए, तो डिफरेंट। एंड अगर इसमें अगर आप बातरे नाइट में गए हो तो आप पर्टिकुलर एक ही चीज़ को याद कर पाओगे। एंड जो सराउंड्स में जितने सारे फुल ऑफ पीपल होंगे, अगर ज़्यादा लोग होंगे तो भी आप सारे लोगों को याद नहीं कर पाओगे। सिर्फ एक चीज़ को वो टेस्ट में आएगा, ये आपके जो फ्रेंड्स होंगे उनके जो ड्रेस, उनकी जो स्टाइलिश हेयर कट, या कुछ ना कुछ एक चीज़ ही आप उसे याद कर पाओगे। ओके, ये था इसमें जो कि am I the sum of memories, इसमें लिखा गया था। इस जो मैं आपको छोटी सी अब डायरेक्टली में बता दिया कि इतना ही है, ज़्यादा नहीं। एंड नेक्स्ट है कि द फेलिबिलिटी ऑफ मेमोरी। नेक्स्ट ये देख सकते हो, द फेलिबिलिटी ऑफ मेमोरी। Clues to the malleability of our memory come from the pioneers' work of Professor Elizabeth Loftus at University of California, Irvine, as she transformed the field of memory research by showing how susceptible memories are. Loftus devised an experiment in which she invited volunteers to watch films of car crashes and then asked them a series of questions to test what they remembered. The questions she asked influenced the answers she received. She explains, when I asked how fast were the car going and when they hit each other versus how fast were the cars going and they smashed into each other. Witnesses give different estimates of speed. They thought the cars were going faster when I used the word smashed. Intrigued by the way that leading questions could contaminate memory, she decided to go further. Would it be possible to implant entirely false memory? To find out, she recruited a selection of participants and had her team contact their families to get information about events in their past. Armed with this information, she researched the researcher put together four stories about each participant childhood, and three were true, and the fourth story contained plausible information but was entirely made up. The fourth story was about getting lost in a shopping mall as a child and being found by a kind elderly person, and finally being reunited with a parent. In a series of interviews, participants were told the four stories. At least a quarter claimed they could remember the incident of being lost in the mall, even though it hadn't actually happened. And it didn't stop there. Laptos explains they may start to remember a little bit about it, but when they come back a week later, they are starting to remember more. Maybe they will talk about the older woman who rescued them. Over time, more and more detail creeped into the false memory. The old lady was wearing this crazy hat, and I had my favorite toy with me. My mom was so mad. So, not only was it possible to implant false new memories in the brain, but people embraced and embellish, embellish them unknowingly, weaving fantasy into the fabric of their identity. We are all susceptible to this memory manipulation, even Laptos herself. As it turns out, when Elizabeth was a child, her mother had drowned in a swimming pool. Years later, a conversation with a relative brought out an extraordinary fact that Elizabeth had been the one to find her mother's body in the pool. That news came as a shock to her. She hadn't known that. And in fact, she did not believe it, but she describes, I went home from that birthday and I started to think, maybe I did. I started to think about other things that I did remember. Like when the fireman came, they gave me oxygen. Maybe I needed to the oxygen because I was so upset that I found the body. Soon she could visualize her mother in the swimming pool, but then her relative called to say he had made a mistake. It wasn't the young Elizabeth after all who had found the body. It had been Elizabeth's aunt. And that's how Laptos had the opportunity to experience what it was like to possess her own false memory, richly detailed and deeply felt. Our fast, our fast is not a faithful record. Instead, it's a reconstruction, and sometimes it can border on mythology. When we review our life memories, we should do so with the awareness that not all the details are accurate. Some came from stories that people told us about ourselves, others were filled in with what we thought must have happened. So, so if you were your answer to who you are is based simply on your memories, that makes your identity something of a strange, ongoing, mutable narrative. Okay, this is all about कि द फेलिबिलिटी ऑफ मेमोरी. ओके, आपको इस सब से ही पता चल रहा होगा कि व्हाट इज इन दिस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में क्या है पैराग्राफ में. इसमें जो एलिजाबेथ एक डॉक्टर होते हैं, वो एक एक्सपेरिमेंट करते हैं बहुत सारा योल्ड एडल्ट लोगों को लेकर। एंड वो इसमें देखते हैं कि जब उनको जो उनकी जो फास्ट लाइफ के बारे में, सॉरी पास्ट जो चीज़ों के बारे में पूछा गया, तो ऑलमोस्ट एवरीथिंग लोग आपने जो फास्ट के बारे में भूल चुके हैं। एंड दे विल बी सेइंग कि कुछ अपना एक फैंटासी वर्ल्ड बना के, फैंटासी स्टोरी बना के वो पेश करते थे। एंड उनके जो परिवार के बारे में भी पूछा गया, तो उनके परिवार को भी याद नहीं रहा कि, एंड वो भी एक फैंटासी कुछ नैरेटिव एक स्टोरी बता देते हैं। तो इसमें एक एंड आल्सो वो एलिजाबेथ जिन्होंने वो एक्सपेरिमेंट किया था, वो खुद भी एक अपनी माँ का बारे में याद करने की सोच रहे थे जब कि वो छोटा था। वो उनके मम्मी का डेथ हो गया था, तो वो डेथ होने के बाद एक दिन क्या डेथ हुआ है, छोटे जब वो छोटा था तो भी वो डेथ हो गया था उनकी मम्मी की। तो एक दिन क्या हुआ कि ऐसे बैठे हैं एंड ग्रुप में, एंड उसमें वो एलिजाबेथ अपनी रिलेटिव से एक बात सुनती है कि एलिजाबेथ से ही, उसके द्वारा ही वो उसकी माता को डेड बॉडी मिल पाया। तो वो जब उसकी बर्थडे था, उसकी मम्मी की थी, तो वो उस घर में गया एंड उसमें कोशिश किया कि कुछ भी थोड़ी सी याद हो रह जाए, अगर मैं कैसे इमोशन में क्या कर रहा था, क्राइंग कर रहा था, या उस टाइम पे मेरी क्या सिचुएशन थी, एंड फायर में आकर मुझे ऑक्सीजन दिया, ऐसा कुछ याद करने के लिए वो कोशिश कर रही थी, बट कोशिश नहीं कर पाया। एंड वो जो सराउंड्स में, एंड उसके बाद वो रिलेटिव से बताती है कि वो एलिजाबेथ की आंट थी, ओके मॉम नहीं थी। तो इसमें एक कंक्लूजन निकल के आता है कि हम क्या थे वो हमें याद नहीं रहता, वो मेमोरीज की मेमोरी के फेलिबिलिटी के लिए। लेकिन हम क्या करते हैं, जो लोग कहते हैं कि सराउंड में कहते हैं, उनका जो थॉट्स को लेकर, उनके ओपिनियंस को लेकर हम एक लिमिट्स, हम एक चीज़ बिलीव बना लेते हैं कि हाँ ऐसा हुआ होगा, तो वो बोल रहा है तो हुआ होगा ऐसा। लेकिन एक्चुअली वो ऐसा हुआ नहीं है, वो एक स्टोरी, वो नैरेटिव करके वो फॉल्स एक लाई मीच सॉरी रॉन्ग स्टोरीज, मतलब वो ट्रूथ स्टोरीज नहीं है, ट्रूथ नॉट ट्रू स्टोरीज। ओके। एंड इसमें एक बॉस करके लिखा है कि मेमोरी ऑफ द फ्यूचर के बारे में। तो इसके बारे में थोड़ी सी रीडिंग करूँगा। ये था जो मैंने अभी आपको समझाया ना, मैंने कोशिश किया, बट आई थिंक ये आपको समझ में थोड़ी सी आई हो या नहीं, आई होप थोड़ी सी तो समझ में आया होगा। तो फेलिबिलिटी ऑफ मेमोरी के बारे में ये था। एंड इसके बाद मेमोरी ऑफ द फ्यूचर, जो कि एक बॉक्स में लिखा है, मैं वो भी दिखाया था। तो इसमें लिखा है कि हेनरी मोलायसन suffered his past major elliptic seizure on his 15th birthday. From there, the seizure grew more frequent, faced with a future of violent convulsions, and Henry underwent an experimental surgery, and one which removed the middle part of the temporal lobe, including the hippocampus, on the both sides of his brain. Henry was cured of the seizure, but with a dire side effect for the rest of his life. He was unable to establish any new memories. But the story doesn't end there. Beyond his inability to form new memories, he was also unable to imagine the future. Picture what it would be like to go to the beach tomorrow, and what do you conjure of surfers and sand castles and crashing waves, rays of sun breaking through clouds? If you were to ask Henry what he might imagine, a typically response might be, all I can come up with is the color blue. His misfortune reveals something about the brain mechanisms that underlie memory. Their purpose is not simply to record what has gone before, but to allow us to project forward into the future, to imagine tomorrow's experience at the beach. The hippocampus, in the particular, plays a key role in assembling an imagined future by recombining information from our past. ओके, इसमें जो हेनरी मोल्सन्स एक इंसान का नाम है, वो एक पर्सन होते हैं। वो एक सीजियर में एलिप्टिक सीजियर में फंस जाते हैं एंड वो इमेजिन नहीं कर पाते हैं कि फ्यूचर के बारे में एंड कल क्या होगा। हम कल जाएंगे बीच में, बीच में हमारा सॉन्स रेस आ रहा होगा, ब्लू रेस। वो अगर उन्हें पूछा जाए कि वो मिसफॉर्चुनली वो बोलते हैं कि वो सिर्फ ब्लू रेस को ही याद करते हैं। ओके, इसमें ये जो बॉक्स के अंदर दिया गया जो मेन चीज़ क्या है, मेन चीज़ ये है कि जो हिपोकैम्पस जो एक पार्ट होता है हमारे ब्रेन का, वो बहुत बड़ा रोल प्ले करता है टू कंबाइन द फास्ट, जो बीते दिन का जो हमारे जो फास्ट है उसको कंबाइन करके फ्यूचर को इमेजिन करने में मदद करती है बहुत ज़्यादा। ओके, ये था मेमोरी ऑफ द फ्यूचर के बारे में। एंड नेक्स्ट है द एजिंग ब्रेन। एजिंग ब्रेन, एजिंग ब्रेन के बारे में। ओके, टुडे we are living longer than at any point in human history, and this presents challenges for maintaining brain health. Diseases like Alzheimer's and the Parkinson's attack our brain tissue, and with it, the essence of who we are. But here is the good news: in the same way that your environment and the behavior shape your brain when you are younger, and they are just as important in your later years. Okay, and across the US, more than 1,100 nuns, priests, and brothers have been taking part in a unique research project, the Religious Orders Study, to explore the effects of aging on the brain. In particular, the study is interested in teasing out the risk factors for Alzheimer's disease, and it includes subjects aged 65 and over, and who are symptoms free and do not exhibit any measurable signs of disease. In addition to being a stable group that can be easily tracked down each year for regular tests, the religious orders share a similar lifestyle, including nutrition and living standards. This allows for fewer so-called confounding factors or differences that might arise in the wider population, like diet or socio-economic status or education, all which could interfere with other study results. Data collection began in 1994. So far, Dr. David Bennett and his team at Ross University in Chicago have collected over 350 brains, and each one is carefully preserved and examined for the microscopic evidence of age-related brain disease, and that's only half the study. The other half involves the collection of the in-depth data on each participant while they are alive. Every year, everyone in the study undergoes a battery of tests ranging from psychological and cognitive appraisals to medical and physical and genetic tests. Okay, when the team began their research, they expected to find a clear-cut link between cognitive decline and the three diseases that are the most common causes of dementia: Alzheimer, Alzheimer's, stroke, and the Parkinson's. Instead, here is what they found: having brain tissue that was being riddled with the ravages of Alzheimer's disease did not necessarily mean a person would experience cognitive problem. Some people were dying with a full-blown Alzheimer's and pathology without having cognitive loss. What was going on? The team went back to their substantial data sets for the clues, and Bennett found that psychological and experimental factors determine whether there was loss of cognition, and specifically cognitive exercise, that is activity that keeps the brain active, like crosswords, reading, driving, learning new skills, and having responsibilities, was protective. So were social activity, social networks, and interaction, and physical activity. On the flip side, they found that negative psychological factors like loneliness, anxiety, depression, and proneness to psychological distress were related to more rapid cognitive decline. Positive traits like conscientiousness, purpose in life, and keeping busy were protective. The participants with diseased neural tissues but no cognitive symptoms have built up what is known as cognitive reserve. As areas of brain tissue have degenerated, other areas have been well exercised and therefore have compensated and taken over those functions. The more we keep our brains cognitively fit, typically by challenging them with difficult and novel tasks, including social interaction, the more neural networks will new roadways to get from A to B. Think of the brain like a toolbox. If it's a good toolbox, it will contain all the tools you need to get a job done. If you need to disengage, disengage, disengage a bolt, you might fish out a wretched, wretched. If you don't have access to the wretched, you will pull out a wrench. If the wrench is missing, you might try a pair of pliers. It's the same concept in a cognitively fit brain. Evenly, if many pathways degenerate because of disease, the brain can retrieve other solutions. The nonce brain demonstrates that it's possible to protect our brain and to help hold on to who we are for as long as possible. We can't stop the process of aging, but by practicing all the skills in our cognitive toolbox, we may be able to slow it down. ओके ये था. Okay, now I completely read the aging of brain, and now I'm going to talk about इसके बारे में थोड़ी सी हम बात करते हैं. Okay, the aging of brain मतलब क्या होता है? एजिंग ऑफ ब्रेन, इसमें एक चीज़ लिखा है कि कॉग्निटिव के बारे में बात किया गया है. कॉग्निटिव क्या होता है? ये कॉग्निटिव एक ऐसी चीज स्टेट होता है जहाँ पर, सॉरी मैं गलत, अगर गलत होऊंगा तो आप बता देना. कॉग्निटिव एक ऐसी चीज होता है जहाँ पर हमारे ब्रेन बहुत एक्टिव होता है. ये एक्टिव कैसे रहेगा? कुछ एक्सरसाइज कर सकते हो आप उसके लिए. वो आपको इसके लिए आप क्रॉस वर्ड्स, मतलब जो वर्ड्स का जो गेम होता है उससे आप खेल सकते हो, या आप बुक रीडिंग कर सकते हो, या और क्या, ड्राइविंग कर सकते हो, और कुछ नया सीखना, कुछ नई स्किल सीखना, एंड कुछ डिफिकल्ट सिचुएशन जैसे कि सोशल इंटरेक्शन में कर सकते हो, जैसे कि वो आप दिमाग में जो कॉग्निटिव है, आपका दिमाग को कॉग्निटिव साइड वो आपको एक्टिव रह सके. ओके, इसके बारे में लिखा है मोटा मोटी. एंड नेक्स्ट है द साइंटिस्ट. ओके, ये था लास्ट पैराग्राफ होगा द साइंटिस्ट के बारे में. ओके, द साइंटिस्ट. द साइंटिस्ट मतलब आई एम साइंटिस्ट. ऐसा क्वेश्चन आता है. When I think about who am I, sorry, who I am, there is one aspect of all that can't be ignored. I am a scientist being. I experience my existence. I feel like I am here, looking out on the world through these eyes, perceiving these technicolor show from my own center stage. Let's call this feeling consciousness or awareness. Scientists often debate the detailed definition of consciousness, but it's easy enough to pin down what we are talking about with the help of simple comparison. When you are awake, you have consciousness, and when you are in deep sleep, you don't. The distinction gives us an inroad for a simple question. What is the difference in the brain activity between those two states? ओके, वो टू स्टेट्स कौन है? एक होता है कॉन्शियस एंड होता है नॉन कॉन्शियस, अनकॉन्शियस ब्रेन. वन वे टू मेजर दैट इज विथ इलेक्ट्रोएन्सेफालोग्राफी, EEG, जो कि ऑलरेडी इस चैप्टर में बताया गया है पहले, which captures a summary of billions of neurons firing by picking up weak electrical signals on the outside of school. It's a bit of a crude technique. Sometimes it's compared to trying to understand the rules of baseball of by holding a microphone against the outside of a baseball stadium. Nonetheless, EEG can offer immediate insights into the differences between the waking and sleeping state. When you are awake, your brain waves reveal that your billions of neurons are engaged in complex exchanges with one another. Think of it like thousands of individuals' conversations in the ball game crowd. When you go to sleep, your body seems to shut down, and it's natural assumptions that the neuronal stadium quiets down. But in 1953, it was discovered such an assumption is incorrect, and the brain is just as active at night as during the day. During sleep, neurons simply coordinate with one another differently, entering a more synchronized and rhythmic state. Imagine the crowd at the stadium doing an instant Mexican wave around and around. As you can imagine, the complexity of the discussion in a stadium is much richer when thousands of discrete conversations are playing out. In contrast, when the crowd is entertained and trained in a billowing wave, it's a less intellectual time. So, who you are at any given moment depends on the detailed rhythms of your neuronal firing. During the day, the conscious you emerges from the integrated neural complexity. At night, when the interaction of the neurons changes just a bit, you disappear. Your loved ones have to wait until the next morning. When your neurons let the wave die, the work themselves back into their complex rhythms. Only then do you return. So, who you are depends on what your neurons are up to moment by moment. ओके, दिस इज आई एम साइंटिस्ट के बारे में लिखा है. इसमें लिखा गया है कि इसमें हमें पता है ब्रेन दो टाइप का होता है, एक कॉन्शियस होता है, एक अनकॉन्शियस होता है. कॉन्शियस वो होता है जो कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी जो हम दिन में होता है, दिन में वो कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी वो करता है, एंड रात में हम सोने वक्त में जो काम करता है, जो कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी को वो शट डाउन कर देता है. शट डाउन करने के बाद कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी को वो रिलीज करता है एंड वो अनकॉन्शियसली काम करता है. जब तक सुबह आता है, उठने के बाद वेकअप, जब वेकअप होता है फिर से वो न्यूरॉन्स को कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी बनाता है, वो होता है अनकॉन्शियस। आई थिंक ऐसा ही। ओके, ये तो आई एम साइंटिस्ट के बारे में, क्योंकि खुद ही ये काम करता है, खुद ही कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी काम करता है कॉन्शियसली दिन में एंड अनकॉन्शियसली रात में। ओके, एंड इसमें एक बॉक्स लिखा है, बॉक्स करके, जो कि ये है कि द माइंड बॉडी प्रॉब्लम। ओके, यहाँ पर लिखा है कि जो कॉन्शियस अवेयरनेस इज वन ऑफ द मोस्ट baffling puzzles of modern neuroscience. What is the relationship between the mental experience and our physical brains? And René Descartes, ओके, रेने डेस्कार्tes ये एक फिलोसोफर है जो कि मेरे दोस्त के से सुना है मैंने। ओके, इसका नाम सुना था, इनका नाम, बट जब मेरे दोस्त ने मुझे पूछा कि ये कौन है, आप तुझे पता है क्या, तो मैंने बोला कि हाँ, ये एक मैथमेटिशियन बोला। उसने बोला कि अरे अरे ये मैथमेटिशियन नहीं है, ये एक फिलोसोफर हैं बोले। तो नहीं, सेकंड थर्ड टाइम आई विल बी इसका नाम सुन रहा हूँ। द फिलोसोफर रेने डेस्कार्tes assumed that an immaterial soul exists separately from the brain. His speculation was that sensory inputs feeds into the pineal gland, which serves the gateway to the immortal spirit, and he most like chose the pineal gland simply because it sits on the brain's midline, while most other brain's features are doubled, one on each hemisphere. The idea of an immaterial soul is easy to imagine. However, it's difficult to reconcile with neuroscientific evidence, and Descartes never got to wonder a neurology war. If he had, he would have seen that when brains change, people's personalities change. Some kind of brain damage make people depressed, other changes make them manic. सॉरी, ये मैनिक नहीं होना सकता, ये पैनिक हो सकता है, पैनिक। Other are just a person's religiosity, sense of humor, or appetite or gambling. Others make a person indecisive and ill, delusional and aggressive. Hence, the difficulty in the framework that the mental is separable from the physical. As well as we will see, modern neuroscience work on the tease out the relationship of detailed neural activity to specific states of consciousness. It's likely that a full understanding of consciousness will require new discoveries and theories. Our field is still quite young. ओके, द माइंड बॉडी प्रॉब्लम में क्या लिखा है कि हमें पता है मॉडर्न न्यूरो साइंस में जो कॉन्शियस अवेयरनेस के बारे में बहुत चल रही है, बफेलिंग फॉजल्स, जो कि मेंटल एक्सपीरियंस एंड आवर फिजिकल ब्रेन एक्सपीरियंस। एंड इसमें एक जो टिप्पणी देते हैं हमारे जो फिलोसोफर रेने डेस्कार्टेस, जो कि ये क्या करते हैं कि जो इमैटेरियल सोल एग्जिस्ट सेपरेटली फ्रॉम ब्रेन, हमारे जो ब्रेन के अलावा एक इमैटेरियल जो सोल होता है वो एग्जिस्ट करता है। एंड बहुत से जो सेंसरी इनपुट्स फीड एंड फिनल ग्लैंड, वो फिनल ग्लैंड में वो फूड करता है जो इनपुट को, एंड गेटवे टू द इमैटेरियल स्पिरिट, and he most likely choose a pineal gland because it sits on the brain's midline. pineal gland हमारे ब्रेन की जो मिड लाइन में ही वो रहती है। तो ही मोस्ट ब्रेन अदर फीचर्स ऑफ द डबल एंड ईच वन हेमिस्फीयर, वो डबल कर देते हैं तो हेमिस्फीयर में, तो इसीलिए वो पिनियल ग्लैंड में ही चूज करते हैं, वो फिलोसोफर रेने डेस्कार्टेस। Okay, this is all about the mind body problem. And next, the last is the brains are like snowflakes. Lastly, देख सकते हो, the brains are like snowflakes. Flakes. Okay, after I finished graduate school, I had the opportunity to work with one of my scientific heroes, Francis Crick. By the time I met him, he had turned his efforts to addressing the problem of consciousness. The chalkboard in his office contained a great deal of writing. What always struck me was that one word was written in the middle much larger than the rest, that the word meaning. We know a lot about the mechanics of neurons and the networks and the brain regions, but we don't know why all those signals coursing around in their mean anything to us. How can the matter of our brains cause us to care about anything? The meaning problem is not yet solved, but here is what I think we can say. The meaning of the something to you is all about your waves of associations based on the whole history of your life experiences. Imagine I were to take a piece of cloth, put some colored pigments on it, and display it to your visual system. Is that likely to trigger memories and fire off your imagination? Well, probably not, because it's just a piece of cloth, right? But now imagine that those pigments on a cloth are arranged into a pattern of a national flag. Almost certainly that sight will trigger something for you. But the specific meaning is unique to your history of experience. You don't perceive objects as they are, you perceive them as you are. Each of us is on our own trajectory, steered by our genes and our experiences, and as a result, every brain has a different internal life. Brains are uh, unique as snowflakes, and as your trillions of new connections continually form and reform, the distinctive patterns means that no one can like you has ever existed or will ever exist again. The experience of your conscious awareness right now is unique to you, and because the physical stuff is constantly changing, we are too, and not we are not fixed from cradle to grave, and we are work in progress. एंड लास्टली ये प्लग दिया गया है क्या इसमें इसमें लिखा है कि जो आवर इंटरप्रिटेशन ऑफ फिजिकल ऑब्जेक्ट्स आज एवरीथिंग टू डू with the historical trajectory of your brain and little to do with an object themselves. These two rectangles contain nothing but the arrangements of colors. A dog who appreciate no meaningful difference between them, and whatever reaction you have on to these all about you, not them. Okay, lastly जो brains are the like snowfalls. After I finish graduate school, जो डेविड एगलमैन जो कहते हैं कि आफ्टर जब मैंने मेरा ग्रेजुएट स्कूल कंप्लीट कर दिया करने के बाद ओके एंड ये उन्हें याद आता है अबाउट द वर्ड मीनिंग के बारे में, एंड वो स्ट्रोक करता है आप उसके उनके दिमाग में, एंड वो यहाँ पर ये कहते हैं कि जो हम हमारी जो लाइफ के अंदर जो एक्सपीरियंस करते हैं, जो भी चीज़ एक्सपीरियंस करते हैं, वो कोई और नहीं एक्सपीरियंस कर सकता. अगर तुम आए हो एंड जो आएंगे जो आने वाले वो भी तुम्हारे जैसा जो एक्सपीरियंस है लाइफ वो कर नहीं सकते, एंड उनकी जो न्यूरॉन्स जो कनेक्टिविटी सर्किटरी वो भी तुम्हारे जैसे कभी हो ही नहीं सकता. एंड क्योंकि लोग अलग अलग हैं, वो अलग अलग सिचुएशंस के अंदर अलग अलग चीज़ों को सो डिफेंड करते हैं, अगेंस्ट में स्ट्राइकिंग करते हैं, तो सबके दिमाग जो एक्सेप्ट करना या कुछ डिसीजंस करना लेना वो डिफरेंट है, एंड आपकी लाइफ भी डिफरेंट है. तो यहाँ पर कोई ये नहीं है कि तुम्हारे जैसा कोई आ सकता है. तुम एक हो, तुम्हारे जैसा कोई और नहीं हो सकता. तुम यूनिक एंड यूनिक हो. ओके, जैसे कि मैं यूनिक, आप भी यूनिक एंड सब. ओके, ये था जो चैप्टर 1 के बारे में था. जो चैप्टर नंबर 1 ये है कि हु एम आई के बारे में, एंड लगभग 2 घंटे हो गया, 2 घंटे मैंने रीडिंग किया. एंड लगभग 17 पेजेस रीडिंग करने के लिए मुझे 2 घंटे लगे। एंड उसमें से मैं बात किया कि उसका जो पेज रीडिंग करने के बाद, कुछ पैराग्राफ रीडिंग करने के बाद मैं उसके बारे में हिंदी में आपको बताया। एंड मेरे गले में थोड़ी सी पेन हो रही है, बट ओके, इट्स ओके, आई विल हैंडल। अभी इतना के लिए, आज के लिए इतना ही एंड करते हैं एंड मिलते हैं नेक्स्ट चैप्टर में आपको। एंड जाने से पहले आप सभी को थैंक यू कहना चाहूँगा, स्पेशली मेरे कृष्णा जी को, जो मुझे और एक और चांस दिया है इस दुनिया को देखने को, कुछ सीखने को, इससे लेसन से एंड अपनी लाइफ लेसन से बहुत सारी चीज़ें सीखने को मिला। एंड आज बहुत बड़ा सीखने को मिला, तो थैंक यू फॉर एवरीथिंग गिवन टू मी। एंड जो भी मेरे ज़िंदगी में दिया है, जो भी आने वाला है, उसके लिए सभी को, एंड मेरे स्पेशली मेरे कृष्णा जी को थैंक यू, जो कि मेरे लिए वो भगवान भी है, मेरे लिए वो दोस्त भी है, मेरे लिए मम्मी, मेरे लिए माँ बाप, सब कुछ। ओके, थैंक यू सबको। इतना ही, मिलते हैं तब तक के लिए, बाय एंड कीप स्माइलिंग। ओके, नेवर गेट अस मूड अप, स्टार्ट कभी स्टार्ट मत होना, स्माइलिंग करना रहना हर वक्त।